Here's the 30-second lesson on what legends know. Never practice nunchucks in a crowded room. Never eat chole before a road trip. Always take your shirt off before you iron it. Don't take a call near a swimming pool. And don't forget, saving is not investing. Legends don't just save, they invest in mutual funds. Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
The current regime in Bangladesh, remember, we are preferring to call it regime because this is not a constitutionally mandated transitional arrangement. This is an arrangement, provisional arrangement, which has come up as a result of revolutionary developments that took everybody by surprise. That has resulted in this current provisional arrangement. This regime, however, has taken some important decisions. Now, it seems to have taken what looks like its most consequential and controversial decision for now, which will also cause a lot of consternation in India. And that decision is lifting the ban on Jamaat-e-Islami in the country. Jamaat-e-Islami in Bangladesh is a very polarizing factor. Very polarizing in normal times. I know these are not normal times. In times of euphoria, many things are immediately overlooked. But this is something of which we have not heard the last in Bangladesh itself. That said, this is also read in the context of something else that the provisional regime has done. And that context is that just a few days back, this provisional government or this regime had also released from custody, from jail, Mufti Jashimuddin Rahmani, convicted terrorist. He was convicted for the assassination of a blogger, Rajiv Haider. It was a well-known case in the subcontinent and internationally. He was serving his jail sentence. He's been released on parole now. He also founded an organization which was seen to be an affiliate of Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda in the subcontinent, that was called Ansarullah Bangla Team, ABT. ABT had been banned by Sheikh Hasina. So from the jail itself, he relaunched it under a different name, that was Ansarul Islam. But however, he's an acknowledged terrorist, also on the wanted list of the Americans. So he was released. It was seen as a gesture to the mood on the street, but now the lifting of the ban on Jamaat-e-Islami is a more significant thing. Now, before I get into the detail of what Jamaat-e-Islami in Bangladesh is, what it is in the region, and what are the implications of this decision, I shall say one thing pretty much in the beginning of this episode of Cut the Clutter, and then I might say three quickly towards the end. Those three will pertain to our previous episode of Cut the Clutter, which was about the Baluchistan crisis in Pakistan. A couple of things I might have overlooked telling you, which I think are interesting and significant. That said, the thing to say now is that it was in 1947, 77 years ago, that the subcontinent split, India and Pakistan came into being. In these 77 years, Pakistan has not managed even one transition, peaceful transition with three conditions. Should be peaceful, should be constitutionally mandated, and should be after the previous government had completed its full term. Right? That has not happened in Pakistan. Because even in some cases, you might find the previous government did complete a full term, but then again in the middle, the establishment would have forced it to change its prime minister and run the government from outside, etc. So there's never been a proper, routine, boring transition in Pakistan. It's always been exciting. In Bangladesh also, most transitions have not been the same boring, humdrum, routine way as they should take place in democracies. There is 2 days of excitement over election results and the new government comes in and is sworn in. But there is never any uncertainty as to what will happen. You know, at the end of 5 years, there will be an election and somebody will come in. Bangladesh, however, it's only been around 53 years, has at least managed it twice. That is in 1996 and 2001. 1996 from Khalida Zia to Sheikh Hasina, 2001 from Sheikh Hasina to Khalida Zia. So to that extent, Bangladesh has shown better evolution for its democracy. Now, the last 3 elections in Bangladesh were trouble because Sheikh Hasina obviously twisted those elections and electoral processes, etc., for which she's paid a price now and for which her party is paid a price. And it's part of that price that she lost such credibility that she had to go into exile into India now. Her people are being hunted, unfortunately, because violence against anybody is bad and violence for political reasons is even worse. If they've committed any crimes, they should be put to trial, etc., etc. That said, one consequence of this meltdown is this big dramatic change whereby this new regime has lifted the ban on Jamaat-e-Islami. Now we look at this decision along four aspects. Number one, what has happened and why it is significant. Number two, what is Jamaat in this subcontinent? Three, what's peculiar with Jamaat in Bangladesh given the history of 1971 and thereby what does the lifting of the ban mean? And four, who are the key personalities of Bangladeshi Jamaat or who were the key personalities of Bangladeshi Jamaat, which makes it such a polarizing thing. So first of all, the ban that has now been lifted on August 24, it is not a very old ban. The ban had actually been imposed only in August 1 this year. That's a little twist. Ban was imposed because Sheikh Hasina then said that Jamaat-e-Islami was involved in these street protests. However, in August 2013, Supreme Court of Bangladesh had banned Jamaat-e-Islami from contesting elections and political activity, saying that its constitution did not show commitment to secularism, which is what Bangladeshi constitution lays down. Bangladesh is a complex constitution because when Ziaur Rahman was the dictator, Bangladesh has had two military dictators, General Ziaur Rahman and General H.M. Ershad. So under Ziaur Rahman's dictatorship, while Mujibur Rahman had started with a secular republic and secular constitution, Ziaur Rahman had declared it an Islamic republic, and also he had made Islam the religion of the state. In subsequent reforms under Sheikh Hasina, she was able to drop the Islamic Republic definition. So there was some commitment to secularism. However, one thing she was not able to drop was Islam being the state religion in Bangladesh. Yet at the same time, there is a constitutional commitment to secularism, and because Jamaat did not have it, Supreme Court, using that reason, had banned Jamaat from contesting elections, but they were active, they were around, they were active on the street, social media, everywhere. She banned it on August 1. That ban has now been lifted. And the ban has been lifted not just from Jamaat-e-Islami, but from all its affiliates as well, including and especially the Islami Chhatra Sangha, its student body. Its student body is very powerful in many institutions in Bangladesh. In fact, if you look at the other side of the subcontinent, in Pakistan on the west, the Jamaat-e-Islami there also has a very strong student body which is powerful in universities and colleges. Now, this organization was called by Sheikh Hasina as militant, terrorist, pro-Pakistan, organization of murderers, and many of them were convicted, put to trial, convicted, and hanged. What does this organization want? This organization wants Islamic values, Islamic laws, it wants Sharia, it wants to bring in the replica of Riyasat-e-Madina in Bangladesh as well, as it does in Pakistan. In fact, the idea initially was in all of this subcontinent. And it is because of this larger commitment to what is their idea of nation building that this organization was opposed to the Bangladesh freedom movement in 1971 and collaborated fully with the Pakistani army. It also set up some paramilitary organizations fully armed by Pakistan, by Pakistani army, and they were actually in many cases working out of Pakistani army camps and Pakistani army cantonments. And these were Al-Badr, Al-Shams, and the large Razakar force. Razakar, in fact, in Bangladesh has become a slur. And even in the ongoing controversy, this whole thing caught fire when at one point, maybe in a moment of indiscretion, Sheikh Hasina in a press conference said that why are they objecting to job reservations being given to the families of martyrs of 1971 or freedom fighters of 1971. It was a rhetoric comment she made. If we don't give jobs or facilities to families of freedom fighters? Would we give it to families of Razakars? And that's when the crowds took it as a slight, and the slogan of "You are a Razakar, I am a Razakar. Who says so?" That is Shoirakar. The dictator says so. And that's how this revolution on the street caught fire. So this Razakar force was also set up through Jamaat-e-Islami. So Jamaat-e-Islami set up Al-Badr, Al-Shams, Razakar, very many atrocities, mass rapes, mass killings of 1971, particularly of Hindu populations, were blamed on leaders of Jamaat, and they were under trial. Many had escaped. Now it's a complex history. I will try and shorten it and simplify it. Mujibur Rahman, when he came to power, when he took over power, banned this organization. But 1975 August, he was assassinated. As he was assassinated, Ziaur Rahman, the general, came into power after a few changes. In the course of time, he lifted the ban on the party. 1979, he fully lifted the ban and legalized Jamaat-e-Islami, and Jamaat-e-Islami was reborn as Islamic Democratic League. Now, Islamic Democratic League and Muslim League together, they contested in 1971 and got 20 seats. After that, however, the highest number of seats Jamaat-e-Islami has won in Bangladesh is 17 in a house of 300. So it was never a powerful political force. It had street power, but not really a popular power. That's also the case in Pakistan. The Islamist parties in Pakistan have rarely got a vote share, even in two figures, even when they are in coalition with other parties. In a reasonably fair election, I'm saying. At the same time, they all have street power. Now, the leader of Jamaat-e-Islami in Bangladesh, Ghulam Azam, he escaped from Bangladesh as liberation came. He escaped from Bangladesh to Pakistan. He continued with his Pakistani passport. In fact, in Pakistan, he also observed a Save East Pakistan week. So he was hated in Bangladesh because the memories of excesses of Jamaat-e-Islami in cahoots with the Pakistani army were very fresh. He came back to Bangladesh during Zia's rule, and while Zia was there, he carried on. In 1978, he came back. While Zia was in power and he was alive, he carried on. But once Zia was gone, there was a movement of protest against his return in Jamaat-e-Islami. And some of that protest was led by a well-known Bangladeshi author, late Jahanara Imam. Jahanara Imam became an activist, and she started holding what was called as people's courts, Gono Adalat, to try these perpetrators of excesses in 1971. And what was her personal motivation? She had a personal motivation because her son, one of her sons, Shafi Imam Rumi, he had joined Mukti Bahini. He had been picked up by the Pakistani army and the Razakars, and he was taken away and tortured and was never seen after that. So she lost her son and she blamed them for it. And later her other son, Jami, and her husband, Sharif Imam, had also been picked up by the army and Razakars. They were also tortured, as were many other male members of her family. Some of them came back, but her husband was so broken that he couldn't survive. He died 3 days before the liberation of Bangladesh. So she led this campaign and this movement. She also became a very famous writer. By this time, she had a lot of publications, and one of the things she wrote was called Ikatturer Dinguli, which means the days of 1971. Some people have compared this also with the diary of Anne Frank, because it was a personalized account of what happened during those months of torture and excesses and massacres and mass rapes, etc., etc. She also formed an organization called Ghatak Dalal Nirmul Samiti, loosely translated as Committee for Eradicating the Killers and Collaborators of 1971. Now, it was her activism that ultimately, she died in 1994, it was her activism that ultimately led to these trials and convictions when Sheikh Hasina came back to power the second time. That is the post-2008 Sheikh Hasina, when she got really powerful. In fact, that is when even the man who she accused of murdering her son, Rumi, and that murderer was Ali Ehsan Mohammad Mujahid, he was convicted. He was later hanged as well. Life was by no means easy for Jahanara Imam, particularly during this period, 2 terms when BNP was in power because she was accused of being anti-national, easiest charge to throw in the subcontinent. She was charged with treason by the BNP government. Later in 1996, after her death, that charge was dropped by the brief caretaker government, because under the Bangladeshi constitution, then between two elections, for a very short period, a caretaker government came in to hold a fair election. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, when he took over power, he had set up something called the International Crimes Tribunal. In fact, he passed a law, International Crimes Tribunal Act. That law fell by the wayside as he was assassinated and Zia took over. In the course of time, however, Sheikh Hasina revived that law. She revived that law in 2008, 2009. She made many changes to it. And with that, she started trials of these perpetrators of excesses, Jamaat-e-Islami excesses in 1971. In some cases in absentia. Some of these people were in Pakistan, some were known to be in Western countries. She started these trials in absentia. A few more names I will tell you, since I said I will tell you about some key characters of Jamaat-e-Islami, and most of them were executed or spent their lifetime in jail because they were convicted by Sheikh Hasina's tribunal. In fact, Ghulam Azam himself was also convicted and was handed a 90-year jail sentence. He died in jail. Some others also died in jail, but most others were hanged. So I'll give you some names and a little bit about what they were charged with. So Matiur Rahman Nizami was head of Jamaat-e-Islami while Ghulam Azam was away for some period. He also served as an industry minister in a BNP government because BNP was in partnership with Jamaat-e-Islami. So 3 Jamaat-e-Islami ministers have served in BNP governments. All 3 were put to trial. He was accused, besides other things. One, the big allegation was massacre in a place called Demra. The Demra massacre took place on 13th of May 1971. In that massacre, about 800 to 900 Hindus were massacred in a small village. The village was just surrounded by Razakars and Pakistani army, and Hindus were marked out and massacred. 800 to 900. There were also mass rapes, looting, and hundreds of houses were burnt. These are documented stories. That was one of the charges against him. A more recent charge against him also was arms trafficking to rebels, to insurgents in Assam, to the Indian side. For all of these, he was convicted and he was executed on May 11, 2016. Now, look at some of the others. Abdul Manan Bhoya, Shamsul Islam, these were all key figures of Jamaat-e-Islami. The International Criminal Tribunal charged 2 BNP leaders and 11 Jamaat leaders in all. Another important name, Abul Kalam Azad. I know it's a confusing name, but this is Abul Kalam Azad, the Bangladeshi Jamaat leader who was tried in absentia for murder, rape, etc., etc. He had fled, so he was tried in absentia. Then Abdul Qadir Maula. Abdul Qadir Maula was the head of Al-Badr. He was charged with killing 344 Hindus. He was given life sentence, after which there were popular protests, and Supreme Court then raised the sentence to hanging. He was hanged on 11th of December 2013. Then Dilwar Hussein Saidi. Dilwar Hussein Saidi was given life sentence. He died in jail. And then Ali Ehsan Muhammad Mujahid, we told you, he's the one who was also charged with killing the son of Jahanara Imam. He was Secretary General of Jamaat-e-Islami. He was executed in 2017. He was second in command of Al-Badr. He was accused of genocide. Among the genocide activities that he was charged with and for which he was convicted was also the genocide of intellectuals. Now that's something which should not be forgotten, because just 2 days before the liberation of Bangladesh, liberation took place formally on the 16th. On the 14th night, large bodies of Razakars, Al-Badr, Al-Shams people, accompanied by Pakistani army, they went to Dhaka University and other places and rounded up any Bangladeshi, Bengali intellectuals they could find. These were writers, playwrights, doctors, engineers, lawyers. They were all collected, more than 200 of them. A lot of them had already escaped as refugees to India, but these are people who were staying back or who were not able to escape. They were all collected. They were taken to different camps, they were tortured, and then they were all executed at a mass level, and their bodies were thrown away. Many of these bodies were found in heaps. In fact, all of these bodies were discovered later. So that was one of the charges against Ali Ehsan Muhammad Mujahid as well. Also the murder of Rumi, Jahanara Imam's son. Also the murder of Sirajuddin Hussain, who was 1971 executive editor of Daily Ittefaq. He was also killed in the same year. Between 2001 and 6, Mujahid also served as Minister of Social Welfare in Khalida Zia's government. I'm telling you all this so you understand the degree of difficulty and complexity in this situation. The 344 killings that he was accused of was part of what was called as the Char Bhadrasan massacre. Char, as we know in those parts, is temporary river islands that form as flood waters recede and people go there and start doing their farming so they can raise one crop. People were very poor at that point. Even now some char cultivation takes place. So this was a char where a lot of the Hindus lived near the village of Badia Dangi. So they were surrounded on the south bank of Padma and massacred. Then there is also Sayyid Kamruz Zaman, executed on 11th of April 2015. He was a leader of Islamic Chhatra Shibir, that is the student wing of Jamaat-e-Islami. He also became the editor of a publication that he launched, Shonar Bangla. He also was convicted for the assassination of many of these intellectuals on that night in particular. In fact, some more about this, some more about Jamaat-e-Islami in Bangladesh, you can read tomorrow in an article that we'll publish from Ahmed Hussain, who's editor of the new anthem, The Subcontinent in its own words, and a very reputed and a very respected, very eminent Bangladeshi editor. Now, Jamaat-e-Islami in the subcontinent, I had told you, I'll tell you something about that. Jamaat-e-Islami was formed in 1941. In 1941, it was formed by a man by Maulana called Sayyid Abul Ala Maududi. In fact, in all discourse, you will find Maulana Maududi. He is a polarizing figure on the left and on the right, because he had a vision of the place of Muslims in the subcontinent. On 26th of August 1941, in Islamia Park at Lahore, he founded Jamaat-e-Islami. It was an affiliate of Muslim Brotherhood, and it remains an affiliate of Muslim Brotherhood, which is a source of so much tension in the Middle East even now. And it has the same philosophy as Muslim Brotherhood. So the idea was that politics in Islam, politics is integral and inseparable with Islam, the faith. Also that Islam is at odds, Islam is totally contradictory with all modern ideologies, that's capitalism, socialism, liberalism and socialism, and for sure secularism. And that's why Maulana Maududi was anti-Jinnah and opposed the creation of Pakistan, because he thought that, first of all, Jinnah was seen to be a modernist. He was setting up a constitutional state, not an Islamic state, but also for him in Islam, any nationalism was wrong because all of the Muslims had to be one nation. So he opposed the partition of the subcontinent, not because he was an Indian patriot in the old-fashioned sense, because he thought he had the opportunity of converting the entire subcontinent into an Islamic state. While he had one argument with Jinnah, his other argument was with Jamiatul Ulema-e-Hind. That was the other Islamist group in India, led then by Maulana Sayyid Hussein Ahmed Madani. Now, Jamiat also opposed the partition of India, but its logic was different. Jamiat believed in something called as composite nationalism, that Hindus and Muslims can live together in one country, one undivided country, and have a composite nationalism or Muttahida Qawmiyat, where there would be separate institutional structures for Hindus and Muslims. Maulana Maududi rejected that also, but ultimately went to Pakistan. His vision was drawn from the first Muslims in Medina who set up the first Islamic state. Remember, even Imran Khan has been talking about converting Pakistan or making Pakistan evolve into a Riyasat-e-Medina of his imagination. That was Maulana Maududi's idea also, although he did not confine it to just Pakistan. This Jamaat in Pakistan then had many offshoots, and some of those offshoots were later found in the Afghan jihad. For example, Jamiat-e-Islami was drawn from it. In 1972, it was set up by Burhanuddin Rabbani, one of the great Mujahideen commanders. His group was a member of the Peshawar 7, as they were called, the prominent, the 7th largest Mujahideen groups, Peshawar 7. This was one of those, Burhanuddin Rabbani's Jamaat-e-Islami, as was Hizb-e-Islami set up by Gulbuddin Hikmatyar. Now, one of the long-serving chiefs of the Jamaat in Pakistan was Kazi Hussein Ahmed. Kazi Hussein Ahmed led the Jamaat in Pakistan from 1987 to 2009. And between 1987 to about 1994-95, until I was traveling to Pakistan frequently as a reporter, I met him often and interviewed him often. So I'm sharing with you, you can see the screenshots and I will share a link with you. One of those interviews, in fact, my last interview with him conducted in 1994. That is when he was leading and he was supporting in a big way, in a completely unabashed way, the insurgency in Kashmir, which obviously he called jihad. And at one point, when I asked him a question about foreigners who were coming into fight in Kashmir, these were Arabs, Afghans, because Afghan jihad was still on and it looked like the Pakistani side thought that they were winning that Afghan jihad. And many of those fighters at that point were spilling over into Kashmir as well. So I asked him a question about that and that triggered him. So first I asked him, so in this case, would you justify Arabs and Afghans fighting in Kashmir? So listen to his answer. How many are going? There's a great deal of pressure from international quarters on Pakistan. When the Afghan jihad was on, we allowed these people to settle down in Pakistan and fight. And now they want to do exactly the same thing in Kashmir. However, the Pakistan government stops, arrests and deports them under foreign pressure. There is absolutely no justification for this. By this time, he wasn't happy with me. And then I asked him a follow-up question. And the question was, approximately how many foreigners have come in like this? To which his answer was, ये आप क्या सवाल पूछ रहे हैं? ये साफ़ी का सवाल नहीं है. This is not the question of a journalist. ये intelligence का सवाल है. This is a question of an intelligence person. So I tried to reason with him saying, listen, I'm a journalist. It's a legitimate question for a journalist to ask. साफ़ी को भी सवाल ये पूछना जायज़ है. So I asked the question again. Approximately how many foreigners have come in like this? And he replied, you had better stay within your limits. This is not the question of a journalist. We can give you respect only if you stay within journalistic limits. So that was my last brush with him. I thought since the context today was Jamaat-e-Islami, I will mention this also to you. Now the three things which I should have mentioned with that Baluchistan episode of Cut the Clutter. Number one, Gwadar. Gwadar initially was not a part of Pakistan. It was a part of Oman. It was owned by Oman. It was only in 1958, after protracted negotiations, that Pakistan was able to take it from Oman. So that was one little factoid which I thought might be of interest. Number two, Marang Baloch, who is the mass leader of this Baloch uprising, the nationalist movement. I said to you that she is non-violent, she is non-separatist. Important thing also is that she's taken a position, and you can see her tweet, she's taken a position also strongly against attacks on Pakistani army. So that is something which is, in fairness to her, we should mention. And the third thing is an expression, a new expression I read, which I thought I should share with you. This is the region about, we used to say, the great game. So the expression that I'm reading now in the context of both Baluchistan and also what's happening in KPK, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, particularly with Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, TTP, etc., that is the new game. So the zone which saw the great game in the past is now seeing the new game. This was my 3-point addendum.